In this video, I'll show you how to make a scatter plot in Excel and then also add a trend line, which is helpful for seeing the correlation between data points. Okay, this is an example that I used in an earlier video, and I showed you how to take this data and make this into a line graph. All right, so there's one key difference with scatter plots, and I'll show you what that is in a minute. But one thing you want to do on the line graph, it was easier to not write a heading for this first category if we wanted that to show up along this axis. But for a scatter plot, you do want to enter a title there. All right, so I filled that in and wrote that these are the years, and then these data points represent the percentage of women in among all college students. All right, so let's say we want to display this as a scatter plot now. So you would select your two columns of data and then insert, and for the chart options, go to all charts, and then you want to choose the XY Scatterplot. Right, so what this is doing is interpreting these data points as points, okay, with an X value or a horizontal value, and then a Y value or a vertical value. All right, and then you can see there are a couple options here. So this one, this first option is showing the years and the percent of women as data points, and I don't want to do that. I want to show them paired together. All right, so the second option is a better choice. So let's go with that one. All right, so now, for instance, 1910 and 40, right, you can see this on the chart. If you go over to 1910 on the horizontal axis, and then up to 40 to show the percent of women in that year. Okay, so that's what we want to see. Now here's the advantage of doing this over the line graph. If I wanted to add a data point here, it's not easy to do on a line graph because it doesn't really understand that these are, the line graph doesn't understand that these are points with numerical values. It's seeing these years just sort of as labels. Okay, so for instance, if I were to add, let me get rid of this one. Okay, if I were to add in your text, there was another data point for 2016. Okay, and let me put that in just above 2010. Okay, the year 2016, and it might be, you know, around 57%. Okay, so look at where that gets placed on the graph here. Right, it just puts 2016 between 2000 and 2010 because it's not reading this as a number. It doesn't understand that it's greater than 2010. Now I can fix this by switching these two. I can make this 2010 and make this 2016. Okay. However, notice the scale on this axis, it's going by tens, and then all of a sudden it switches to an increase of 6. So it's not really seeing that this is on a different scale. You won't have that issue if you do this as a scatter plot. Okay, so here's the scatter plot, and then let me show you now what this would look like. Let me just insert a data point, 2016 and 57. Okay, and there it is. So you'll notice that it placed it appropriately between 2000 and 2020. It didn't add on anything to the axis here, and it kept this scale of increases by 20 years, which is what I'd like to see. Okay, so for a scatter plot, you don't want to connect these dots, okay, because in particular, now this one is showing a single number corresponding with a single year, but in reality, you're going to have a lot more points that are kind of all over the place. So for a scatter plot, there's really no way to actually connect all of these points with a single line. However, we might be interested in something called a trend line. Okay, and the trend line is just the line of best fit for these points. Right, so what we want to see, is there sort of an overall pattern that seems to be a line? Is it going up? Is it going down? Right, and then how close are these points to that line? Right, so in the options for formatting the chart, you want to right click on any one of these points. Okay, not in format, I always forget that. Okay, so right click on a point and then click add trend line. And then this fills in the line that sort of best fits all of these points as a whole. Now there is a statistical way to calculate what this line is. So this is one major advantage of using technology to just quickly calculate this. Let me show you the formula for getting this line. This is one method for doing this. This is the least square method. All right, and it involves calculating the mean, right, or the average of all of the x values and all of the y values. Okay, so you've got to sum them all up and then divide by how many you have. And then there's a formula for calculating the slope of the line, or how steep or not steep the line is. Okay, and that involves each data point. All right, so this is kind of a long process. You have to take each data point, subtract the mean, do that for all the x's, do that for all the y's, then multiply, okay, and then sum all of those together. Right? And then you also have to take each data point, subtract, or each of the x's, subtract the mean, and square it, add all of those up, and then divide. So you can see if you have 15, 20 data points, it's even with just 15 or 20, this would take a bit of time to do. Okay, so it is possible. It's just a lot of adding and multiplication, but it's a bit time consuming. And then you want to calculate the y-intercept of the line. All right, so there's two things involved in a line. We need to know what the slope is, or how steep or not steep it is, and then also where it crosses the y-axis. Okay, and that's going to determine the position of the line. And then once you have that, then you can actually use graphing techniques to plot that line on your graph. Okay, and there it is. So all of that is what's being done by Excel for you when you just click the option to add the trend line. Now, there are some different options. That's how to get a trend line that's linear, meaning it's actually a straight line. You can do an exponential trend line if you feel like maybe the data shows more of an exponential type of growth. Okay, you can do logarithmic if it's growing but very slowly, polynomial, and there's all kinds of different options. All right, so for our trend lines, let's just go with a linear one, so make sure that option is selected. And then it might be nice to see the equation of the line and also the correlation coefficient. So I'm going to click the options to display the equation on the chart and then display the r squared value. That's the correlation coefficient. All right, and there they are. Oops. Okay. All right, so what this is telling me, this is giving me the equation of the line. All right, so we can graph that, and then this is this correlation coefficient is numerically describing the type of correlation that we have. Is it strong or is it weak? All right, so we need to decide if this is a positive correlation or negative. And I think you can usually see that for yourself. If the line's going up, it's positive. If the line's going down, it's negative. You can also see that from the slope of the equation. If this is a positive number, then it's a positive correlation. If it's negative, then it's negative. R squared, so the correlation number, the closer that R is to 1, the stronger the correlation is, right? And then R squared, all this is doing is getting rid of the negative. And when you square a number that's pretty close to 1, you still get a number that's pretty close to 1. All right, and if you square something that's closer to 0, when you square it, you'll get a number that's closer to 0 as well. All right, so the square is mostly just to get rid of the negative sign, and that's a simplified explanation, but I think it'll do for now. All right, so when we see a correlation coefficient of 0.4595, that's a little bit under 0.5. So this isn't a very good correlation. This is fairly weak. This line doesn't really describe these points. It's not a good fit. All right, so we would say that this is a weak positive correlation, and you can use your judgment as to how weak it is before you decide that there's no correlation. So the closer it is to 0, the closer it is to no correlation. All right, so that's it. So you can just select your data again. Okay, we selected this, we made a scatter plot, and then you just right click on any one of the points and click Add Trend Line to be able to see that line.